Prologue. Cassandra is 20 when she loses everything. Her pack, her mate, her future, everything. It's a rather young age to have your life seemingly end, but that was the reality she faced. She had made her bed, so to speak, sold her soul to the devil with her eyes wide open. Or more accurately, she had made her wish and now had to live with the consequences. It's not like she hadn't been warned. Cass had been visiting the magician, asking him to grant her a wish since she was a child. He had always refused, or not exactly refused, for she had learned he couldn't actually refuse a client if they insisted on making their wish. But he had tried to change her mind, and had in fact succeeded multiple times over the years. But 3 days ago, she had gone back to the shop, that small dark place people avoided looking at too directly as they passed it on the street. She had gone back, desperate and determined, and this time, she hadn't changed her mind. She had made her wish, knowing fully well what the price would be. She just hadn't expected it to hurt so much afterward. The pain was everywhere. It hurt having to leave home, to say goodbye to her brother, to her packmates. She had grown up expecting to be their alpha, their leader. She had been someone who mattered and someone who would matter. Now, because of her wish, because of Sebastian, she was nothing at all, not even herself. Chapter 1. Cassandra. Cass is 8 when she decides she'll dedicate the rest of her life to making Sebastian Sax's existence a living nightmare. Sure, she is still young, but no amount of emotional maturity that might come with time could ever dull the unadulterated loathing she felt at the sight of his stupid mop of brown hair. Cassandra's own hair was the color of wheat, and it sparkled gold under the sun when it shone brightly in the sky. She took great pride in the fact that her mother had, somewhat reluctantly, allowed her to grow it long, below her shoulders in thick curls. That was nothing short of a miracle, for such an inconvenient hairstyle was generally forbidden among the members of their pack destined to be fighters. But while Cassandra was as powerful a fighter in the making as there ever was, she was also quite vain about her beautiful hair. Which is why she hadn't taken it well when Sebastian had stuck a piece of gum he'd been chewing for a suspiciously long time into it. In retrospect, what she hated even more was that she hadn't seen it coming, despite her parents warning her about Sebastian and his packmates. Cassandra and Sebastian's respective packs shared a border set deep within the woods, for once upon a time, their two clans had been united as one. It had split decades ago when two wolves in line to become alpha had fought over the same mate, ending their friendship and any desire to remain part of the same whole. Thus, what had once been a powerful, thriving pack became two resentful halves that blamed each other for their woes. Cass, her brother, and their wolf mates enjoyed adventuring in the woods and often ran into children from the rival pack, whom they naturally ended up playing with. But when she had innocently told her parents about these games, she had been vehemently discouraged from engaging with the other children ever again. For if they were anything like the other members of the Silver Pine Pack, whatever that meant, they weren't worth Cass's time, especially not Sebastian, who was the alpha's son. Cass had been taken aback at first, for she had quite liked Sebastian. He had shown her how to make much better skips with her stones and could build the best huts she had ever seen. However, since her father had sworn his daughter should be making better friends, Cass had taken a new approach to justify her hangouts with the boy and his friends, which all came down to besting the other pack. And from then on, what had started as innocent fun between the children quickly escalated into more and more aggressive attempts to best each other. Nights were spent establishing strategies, peers were briefed to put more focus and energy into the games, and everyone became seriously competitive, for there was no more room for errors when defeat was nothing short of unacceptable. On the day Sebastian put his gum in Cass's hair, the game had been one of tree climbing, the goal being to compete with the other team to see who'd reach the top more quickly. All participants' times would be accumulated and the team with the lower score would win. Unfortunately, performances were looking incredibly tied, and it all came down to the two last contestants to determine the winner. Cass went first, reaching the top in record time though. To her great horror, Sebastian proved himself even more efficient when his turn came. So, naturally, she did what any wolf would have done and made sure to distract him by throwing a small pebble at his back, leading the boy to miss a step, fall down, and lose the race. "That's cheating," Sebastian protested once he got back on his feet, unharmed though there was never any real worry there, since he was, after all, a werewolf. Cass stuck her tongue out at him. If it isn't in the rulebook, it's not cheating. We don't have a rulebook, Sebastian argued. Exactly! Now don't be a sore loser and proclaim us the winners, Cass commanded, earning herself an eruption of triumphant screams from her packmates. She knelt down beside Sebastian, waiting for him to place a crown of twigs and flowers on her head, no higher honor existing in the children's collective minds. Instead, Sebastian spat his gum right on top of Cass's head, making her eyes widen in shock. Sorry, it slipped, the boy smirked. Cass began to scream, trying to get it out but only entrapping the gum within her curls further. Sebastian laughed, thinking the entire spectacle highly entertaining, not only because it served Cass right for cheating, but also because he had never thought she'd get so freaked out about something as silly as her hair. Then, tears welled up in Cass's eyes, her distressed gray gaze meeting Sebastian's, and for all of 10 seconds, he was suddenly very sorry for what he'd done. That is, until Cass threw herself at him, smacking him in the jaw. Then all hell broke loose. Cassandra would meet with the magician for the first time a month later, right after her 9th birthday. The first, though far from her last. Chapter 2. Adrian. Cass is 9 years old when she meets the magician for the first time, though she wouldn't sell him her soul until 12 years later. He is rather impressed when her small blonde head appears behind his counter, for it isn't every day that a mere child dares enter his shop. The place had long been enchanted to repulse passers-by, who would feel an incomprehensible unease when nearing it, which turned into gripping dread should they dare push open the front door. "Are you the magician that grants wishes?" the child asks, unimpressed when Adrian crouches down over the counter. "Who's asking?" he replies with a frown he hopes will scare her away. It doesn't. Unfortunately for Adrian, Cass is a wolf shifter. Despite her young age, she, like most of her kind, is overly confident and astoundingly stupid. At least, in Adrian's opinion. "You mean brave?" Iris, Adrian's assistant, would ask later, upon hearing a similar comment. "Same difference," he'd reply. Adrian understood right then and there that it wouldn't be so easy getting rid of Cassandra. She reminded him of a tenacious pit bull for how pronounced her scowl was, which made him briefly wonder if pit bull shifters existed. He'd have to research that later. "I'm Cassandra Hargrove of the Black Thorn Pack," the girl proclaimed haughtily, "and I'm here to make a wish." "You want to make a wish?" Adrian asked, quickly thinking of the best way to deter her. If he couldn't change this stupid girl's mind, he'd be ruining her life before it even really started. "You know it will cost you, right?" he thus asked. Cass nodded solemnly. "This should cover it," she said, placing a little pink piggy bank on the counter confidently. "All of my savings." Adrian does his best to choke down a laugh as a couple of cents had fallen onto the glass surface. "And how much have you managed to save up, pray tell?" he asks. "At least $30, Cass explained, obviously proud of the fact. "I'm sure in your mind that is a lot of money," Adrian said neutrally. "But it's not money I want." Cassandra sighed dramatically. "Then go ahead and tell me what it is you want, tall guy. I don't have all day." Adrian coughed. "And what are you hoping to wish for so urgently?" he asked, only a little bit curious. "I need you to make someone bald," Cass said, her eyes shining with righteous indignation. "Can you make it happen?" "Can I, an immortal magician with limitless power, make someone bald?" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "I think so, yes." Cass practically squealed in excitement before he continued. "Though, as I'd be taking what matters to you the most in exchange for your wish, I urge you to consider using a good enough razor instead." About to reply, the child had opened her mouth, then closed it back shut. Behind her, the sun was beginning to set, though it still shone a bright, warm light into a corner of the shop. The rest was plunged in darkness as Adrian preferred it. "What do you mean? What matters most to me?" "What's that exactly?" Cass said, her expression suspicious. "I can't tell you that. It really depends on the person. It could range from your PlayStation to one of your parents." And then, because Cass's eyes had widened briefly, he pushed on with a hunch and added, "Or a sibling." "I have a twin brother," Cass whispered, looking slightly taken aback for the first time since she'd walked into the shop. There it is. Adrian, though, satisfied. The kid loved her brother. And when he'd said he'd be taking what she loved most, she'd probably assumed, as most people did, that Adrian would be taking her brother's life as payment. He never actually took a life as payment. That couldn't be done. Probably because the demon who'd given Adrian his powers knew most people wouldn't make a wish if they thought they might lose their own life, or a loved one's life in return. If the brother was in fact what Cass loved most, granting her a wish would most certainly separate them, either physically or emotionally, which was terrible in itself. But because she hadn't asked, he let her assume her wish would cost her brother his life, hoping this would deter more effectively from making her wish. "Well, there you go," Adrian then proclaimed. "Do you really want to risk losing your brother just so some guy might lose his hair?" "Sebastian Sachs isn't just some guy," Cass replied, wrinkling her nose in disgust. "He's the lowest, most awful person who's ever walked this earth." Adrian did his best to keep a straight face. "That bad?" he asked. "Worst. He's a real nuisance," Cass exclaimed, looking somewhat proud of herself for conjuring up the word. "A life ruiner." Adrian nodded in feigned understanding. "I'm sure he is. But then again, maybe you don't have to wish for his demise. You could, I don't know, just make it happen yourself? You seem like quite a capable kid to me." Cass nodded slowly as she considered his words. "Yeah, I guess I don't really need you," she had shrugged eventually. "You do seem rather useless." "Oh, I'm a lost cause to be sure." Adrian handed her piggy bank back. "Good luck with ruining the nuisance's life right back, little Cassandra." "I'm not little. You're the one who's a giraffe," she snapped, exiting the shop with her nose raised in the air. Adrian felt somewhat sorry for Sebastian Sachs right then, despite being unsure what it was he'd done to earn himself such violent ire. Chapter 3. Cassandra. Cass is 11 when she finally gets her proper revenge. It's not like she hadn't tried before then. There had been the stolen pet attempt, during which Cass and her brother had hidden away their own beloved hedgehog, sending themselves a kidnapping note signed by Sebastian, forcing the false culprit into publicly apologizing for something he'd never done. It was a rather good revenge, except Sebastian had immediately retaliated with something even better, making all of Cass's efforts null. He'd come up with a fake apology letter attempt in which he'd written a note from Cass's detailing everything she'd supposedly done wrong over the last few months. This included faking a kidnapping, tampering with their pack's crops, stealing a prized possession from his father, and spreading rumors about Sebastian and his family. Sebastian's parents had been quick to believe all these made-up facts, a lot of which had been based on real hardships their pack had faced. They had confronted Cass's parents in a communal meeting including other packs, which had degenerated into a full-blown shouting match in the middle of which Cass had stood, perfectly dumbfounded. These back and forth went on for 2 years, during which Cass would come up with some form of revenge, and an affronted Sebastian would retaliate with another, better one, the circle never ending, until Cass reached 11, that is. Her 11th birthday marked Sebastian's 13th, and like every 13-year-old wolf in the region, Sebastian was set to compete against other shifters his age in a full-day hunt in the woods. This rite of passage took place every year, and everyone expected the young wolf who brought back the biggest, most impressive bounty to be awarded a prize, thus bringing great honor to his pack. In everyone's mind, there was no doubt this would be Sebastian, the hunter with the most skills in this year's crop. Cass, not being old enough, wasn't set to participate, but this was her chance to finally get back at Sebastian, and she was determined to win despite the odds. That's why, weeks before the hunt, she visited the magician once more. Cass entered Adrian's shop with all the determination of righteous fury, explaining how she wished for him to make her strong enough to win. "You're willing to risk losing your darling twin brother over this?" Adrian tusked. "I didn't take you for being this lazy." "I'm not lazy!" Cass protested, clenching her fists. "Then why come to me with this request, when you could very well win this hunt by honing your skills the traditional way?" "I can't," Cass shut her mouth. She was about to say there was no way she could win by herself. She was younger, not good enough. "Would it really be winning if you bested that Sebastian of yours because of magic?" Adrian observed. Cass gritted her teeth and got to work. Weeks before the hunt, she secretly obtained the plans for the event. She pored over them by night, memorizing every detail, every location where the game was likely to roam. By day, she'd shift into her wolf form and venture into the forest, mapping out the terrain, noting the tracks of deer and the denser, riskier trails where bears might roam. She trained herself to turn more quickly, to move quietly, to blend into the shadows and leaves. One crisp morning, her breath visible in the chilly air, Cassandra stumbled upon a bear. Her heart raced as she observed it from a distance, noting its size and the power in its limbs. Over the following days, she tracked the beast while in her human form to not alert it of her scent, learning its habits and patterns. On the day of the hunt, Cassandra rose before dawn, her body tense with anticipation. She entered the woods separately, following the faint trail she had memorized, diverging from the path taken by Sebastian and the other young wolves. Her journey through the underbrush was silent, her heart pounding, as she waited for it to appear. And then, with the sun just beginning to peek over the horizon, it did. The battle took longer than Cass had anticipated, and, overwhelmed with exertion, she caught herself thinking more than once that perhaps she'd been a fool, taking on such a dangerous prey. Perhaps she wouldn't be able to defeat it, and, furthermore, perhaps it would defeat her. Was there any chance left for escape at this point? Only the thought of Sebastian winning the competition should she not return with this bear to best him kept her going, despite the burning sensation in her muscles and the fear racing her heart. She couldn't let Sebastian win, she wouldn't allow it, and this bear stood between her and her goal. This bear had to die. As she emerged into the clearing, dragging its massive body behind her, the crowd's reaction was instant. Stunned silence gave way to uproarious applause and cheering. She dropped her bounty at the center of the clearing, standing tall, her chest heaving with exertion. The elders, including her own parents, exchanged shocked glances before the head elder stepped forward, his face a mask of reluctant admiration. He lifted the garland, traditionally meant for Sebastian, and placed it around Cassandra's neck. "In recognition of an unprecedented feat," he announced, his voice booming over the crowd, "we crown Cassandra as this year's victor." Cass hadn't really expected the overall uproar her victory would cause, nor did she think she'd become somewhat of a local prodigy, setting herself apart not just as a participant, but as a legend in the making. And truth be told, she didn't much care for it, at least not nearly as much as the look of pure shock on Sebastian's face, the only real reward for all of Cass's effort. She lifted her chin, her eyes meeting his. In this light, his irises were green, wide with surprise, resentment, and anger. But there was also a hint of something new, something dangerously close to admiration that went straight to Cass's head, making her feel dizzy with pride. Her heart beat wildly against her ribcage, and little did she know she'd grow rather addicted to this feeling. Though, unfortunately for her, nothing but Sebastian's admiring gaze could procure it to her. Chapter 4. Cassandra. Cass is 13 when she wins her first fight against an older beta wolf from her pack in a fight. She is an aggressive fighter, a force to be reckoned with, and despite how young she is still, she's confident she'll only grow stronger. She now wears her hair tightly back into a severe braid, one that she hates taking down even when in the shower, for it that still hurts that her hair hasn't grown back its full length. Her father has started pitting her and her twin brother Ronan against each other, testing their abilities. He hasn't said anything outright, but Cass knows he's trying to determine which one of them will be best suited to become alpha, a decision he wouldn't be making before they've reached their 18th birthday. Though there is no doubt in Cass's mind that she will be the victor. She'll accept nothing less for, across the woods where Sebastian's pack reside, it is already looking like he'll become the next alpha. And if Sebastian is to be an alpha, then so is Cass. She'll tolerate nothing less, for it would likely kill her to be less than him. He'll never admire her again if she isn't his equal at the very least, if not better than him in every way. Though, she hasn't had much luck with defeating him at anything these days. Cass may have bested an older male in a fight, and she may get the upper hand on her brother over and over again, but Sebastian is a different story. The two of them have taken to sneak into the woods at night to hunt or fight ever since Cass's triumph 2 years ago. It's just the two of them, their competition having outgrown the need to bring other members of their pack into this. The others don't matter. But what used to be somewhat closely tied brawls from which a victory wasn't easily discernible has started to shift. Cass may be tall for her age, but she is lean and slim, with baby fat sticking to her cheeks still. Sebastian, on the other hand, is a teenager now. He is getting taller, broader, his muscles growing fuller and more defined with each passing day, and honing a newfound strength Cass sometimes feels coursing beneath her fingers when their bodies collide in battle. It's getting easier for him to twist her arms, to pin her down or against a tree, his hazel eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She fears that soon he'll grow bored of her when Cass simply won't make of a notable adversary any longer. Cass's father is always telling her that you're only worth what you can do. So she tells Sebastian about her latest victory between one hit and the next. He taunts that other are surely letting her win for her skills are lacking and her technique barely passable. "You're the one holding back your punches," Cass retorts because she isn't a fool. She hates him for holding back. She hates him for having broader shoulders, while she is stuck at the very early stages of puberty, as lean as ever without the hint of a curve having appeared. Not that it's breasts or hips she's after, they wouldn't do her much good in a fight. It's the height and strength that'll come with age that she is craving. For if the gap in stature between her and Sebastian have become too pronounced, it is unacceptable that he tries to shield her from it. Cass has never felt as small and inconsequential. If anything, at least try to hide better. She sneers, making him fall down with a well-placed swipe of her leg. "If you're not going to fight me, then don't waste my time." She rolls them over, straddling Sebastian and pinning him to the ground in a move she's not quite sure how she manages. Sebastian is blinking at her, confusion and surprise marking his features as Cass stares down, not believing her own luck. Her thighs are tight around Sebastian's, her hands holding onto his shoulders. A faint, though fascinating blush begins to spread across her adversary's cheekbones. Cass's fingers loosen somewhat against the fabric of his shirt, for she is distracted with how dark Sebastian's gaze becomes, dark with something she cannot name. It's a new sort of gaze, not so different from the somewhat admiring ones she'd received from time to time for her efforts in the past, but also entirely new nonetheless. Sebastian is holding himself still except for the quick rise and fall of his chest. His mouth is partially opened as he breathes heavily. Cass's mouth is very dry and her throat very tight. She isn't sure why exactly. Perhaps the change in Sebastian's scent? It's spiking up dangerously, thickening around her, making everything feel oppressively slow, though not entirely unpleasant. Cass can't help but sway forward, though at the slightest movement, Sebastian flips her over, pinning her to ground in his stead, using all of his greater body mass to keep her still. "Stop moving," he groans against her neck. "You stop moving," Cass replies, rather lamely, her words coming out much more whiny than expected. And then she feels the graze of Sebastian's teeth against her neck. Cass's eyes widen in disbelief and she grabs onto his hair to move him away. "Get off me!" she growls, genuine fear cloying at her senses. Sebastian complies to her demand, moving swiftly like he's been burned. "Were you about to—" Cass can't bring herself to say the words. He couldn't have been about to bite her, right? She may be only 13, but she knows what a bite mark entails. A claiming, of sorts. A total act of dominance, one only acceptable if done with the intention to mate. The thought makes Cassandra's head spin, torn between fear, shame, and strange disappointment when Sebastian protests, vehemently. Of course not. He says this like the mere idea appalls him, which, good. Cass has no desire to be mated at 13, least of all to Sebastian of all people, but— "I scared you," Sebastian murmurs, looking suddenly so regretful you'd think Cass were something fragile to be looked after. Humiliation burns bright inside her stomach. "Shut up!" she snaps, quickly drying away tears she hadn't noticed until now. She gets to her feet on swift movement and runs off. The next night, Sebastian doesn't show up at their meeting place. They don't see much of each other after this for a while. Chapter 5. Cassandra. Cass is 15 when she sees Sebastian again. Well, that's not entirely true. She'd seen him in passing the last 2 years. There just hadn't been any words properly exchanged between them. A couple of insults or mean-spirited jabs here and there, yes, but even that was pretty tame compared to the more physical fights they used to engage in. Though his absence and growing indifference have been slowly driving Cass insane. So much so that she'd started dreaming of him at night, dreams that unfortunately stuck with her when she'd wake in the early hours of the morning, breathless and panting. She dreams of meeting in the forest, of fighting him and besting him, of finding that admiration in his gaze once more. And then, in almost every dream, Sebastian bites her in the neck, prompting Cass to wake up in a startled gasp. Memories of his teeth against her skin, real sensations mixed with more imagined versions of the even, haunt her during the day, to the point where she sometimes thinks of nothing else. She wants to be rid of these dreams. She doesn't want them. And she can't think of any solutions to make it happen beside, perhaps, magic. "Could you take my dreams away?" she asked the magician. Next to him is a girl Cass has never met before, a human with strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes, with absolutely no hint of magic about her whatsoever. It's anyone's guess why a random human hangs out with a magician. Cass doesn't really care to ask. What type of nightmare could plague a 15-year-old to the point where she'd be desperate enough to make a life-ruining wish? Cass hears the human whispers to Adrian in what she probably thinks is discreet. It isn't. Cass is a shifter. She has excellent hearing. Dreams often reflect unconscious feelings or thoughts, Adrian replies. The best way to get rid of them is to confront them. How? Cass snaps, crossing her arms. The human, who mustn't be used to shifters, tenses at her tone and snaps back, probably unconsciously. Adrian just snorts. Iris, what do you dream about? He asks his friend. The blonde frowns, looking all the world like she doesn't really want to answer. My father, mostly, she replies, sending Cass a nervous glance. She's probably eager for her to leave. Your father? Cass presses instead, with a raise of her eyebrows. He died recently, Iris explains. I dream of seeing him again, of him being alive. Cass pales slightly as she processes the words, nodding her head curtly and leaving as fast she'd come. Iris's words had struck a sensitive chord, for it had made Cass realize confronting Sebastian for what he'd almost done that night in the woods was something she desired, perhaps even needed. And it terrified her, which is why she doesn't dare approach or meet his eyes when she sees him next. The setting is a lake, on which's shore a gathering is being held late into the night, and by gathering, Cass is no fool. She knows this is going to be a full-blown party. She doesn't tend to go out much. She's too busy training, and when she isn't training, following her father into different meetings, negotiations, and plannings, all regarding pack duties. The little time she has left for herself is spent on her education, which she receives from home as most other teens of the pack. If Cass doesn't go out much, neither does her brother, but he's been invited by a friend from an allied pack, which is settled a couple hours' drive from their own. And Ronan, Cass's brother, being very much into said friend, there was simply no chance of him missing on the chance to meet up with her far away from adult supervision. Cass, he'd told her, I'm telling you, this is it. Kaylee's my mate, I know it. Cass had rolled her eyes, perfectly uninterested in mates and all the drama that went with looking for one, especially at their age. In her opinion, finding a mate had more to do with securing a strategic match that would profit the pack than finding someone attractive. Their father had made it clear he would allow nothing less for his children, one of which was their future alpha. Ronan was a fool if he thought Kaylee would suit his father's business objectives. Despite it, though, her brother's hopeful looks and enthusiastic grins had roped her in, along with a couple more friends from the pack, into accompanying him for moral support. All 6 teens had fled their bed late into the evening, to drive off unnoticed to the lake. What they hadn't been expected was that Kaylee's pack had friends from another pack, who themselves were good friends with Sebastian's pack, who'd been invited to join on in the celebration. Sebastian is even taller and broader than before, being almost 18 now, and apparently attractive if all the looks he's receiving from different girls are any indications. Cass doesn't know what they see in him personally. He has perfectly average hazel eyes that turn a warm green depending on the light, but she's seen much nicer eyes. Somewhere, sometime, certainly. He is well built, but so are most young men his age, and his brown hair is as messy as when they were young. Maybe it's his smile? He flashes a sort of lopsided grin at people he likes, so not so much at Cass. That bears a hint of mischief. Sure, that aggravates her, but perhaps other girls interpret his smiles as flirtations, a hint of something more? Cass frowns at the idea, which she deems unacceptable as soon as it crosses her mind and decides not to dwell on. Maybe it's his light freckles. Sebastian Sachs has freckles? Jess, one of Cass's good friends, asks when she shares her thoughts with her. I hadn't even noticed. Cass rolls her eyes because how would anyone miss any of Sebastian's freckles, mostly located on the bridge of his nose? She has no idea. No, she decides, watching him walk around to fetch himself a beer, joking at a comment another makes. It isn't about his looks. If people stare, it's because of the confidence he exudes, the way he carries himself, and speaks, already laced with the effortless authority befitting an alpha, a quiet dominance everyone around the lake instinctively recognizes. That night, Cass dreams that she is back by the lake, but this time, it is her everyone stares at. Her that is the subject of their admiration, and her that holds her head high in dominance, for she too is a future alpha. Sebastian is among the crowd, subjected to her authority like every other, except it is him, and his subjugation makes Cass's wolf preen with so much pride, she wakes up feeling all-powerful and liberatingly in control. She knows what she needs to do. She's matched Sebastian's strategic skills as a child. She now needs to match his social skills as a teen. Maybe then, he'll stop treating her like a youngling and see her for the rival she is once more, a rival he'd never dare put his teeth upon again. Chapter 6, Cassandra. Cass is about to turn 16 when she enacts her plan, a couple of weeks after seeing Sebastian charm everyone around a campfire on the lake's shore. The night is one for another party, though. This time, it's being held in a club, one Cass has no trouble getting into, for if she'll be turning 16 in only a couple hours, she doesn't look it. Cassandra is tall with long, well-shaped legs everyone will undoubtedly stare at in the dress she's wearing, and with enough makeup, can easily pass for a young adult. She is pretty enough, she knows, maybe not the most beautiful young woman in the pack, for her features are perhaps too cutting and lacking a softer, more feminine edge to fully earn her the title. But she has nice, full lips and dark gray eyes, and most importantly, a body she's caught practically every single member of her pack stare at more than once. She's satisfied with the amounts of lingering looks she receives when she gets to the club, growing more and more insistent as she starts to dance. Her brother a little less so, for it makes him feel uncomfortable, but that's his problem, not Cass's. She's stuck between two boys, both slightly older than her, though. Cass has no doubt she'd easily best them in physical, and so feels nothing but ease when her eyes meet Sebastian's as he's getting a drink from the bar. His widens slightly, if briefly, before his mouth purses into a grim line. The hint of a frown grazes his features and his body twitches imperceptibly like he's going to walk over to her. Cass's heartbeat picks up expectantly. But then, one of Sebastian's friend, a wolf from Kaylee's pack she's seen before, lightly punches his shoulder, diverting his attention. The next thing Cass knows, they're walking off to join a small group seated in a booth. Cass's heart sinks in consternation, humiliation coloring her cheeks. That's it? That's all she gets for her efforts? Barely a glance from her rival, only marked with slight irritation instead of the full-blown, all-consuming anger she's been used to growing up. This won't do. Not in a million years. If Sebastian thinks he's better than her and her pack now, to the point where he won't even entertain their rivalry, then Cass absolutely has to remind him who he's dealing with. She observes him discreetly, the way he seems at ease with this other wolf from Kaylee's pack, the one that dared steal away his attention. They seem like they're good friends. Apparently this friend is more interesting than Cass. Well then. The second Sebastian's little buddy walks away from the group, heading towards the bar again. She makes her way over there too, casually settling her body close to her target's. It isn't long before he sees her. his scent spiking up with an obvious interest that makes Cass wants to roll her eyes. "Hey, I've seen you before, I think." He greets her, rather lamely. Cass doesn't know what Sebastian sees in someone so ineloquent, but whatever. "I don't think so. I'd remember," she says, giving him a wink that thickens the syrupy desire lacing his scent even further. "This might be kind of forward and you can totally say no, but can I get you a beer?" Peter asks, eyes stuck on Cass's lips. "I don't want a beer," she replies, granting him a small smile that makes Peter flush. "Maybe a cocktail?" Cass shakes her head, batting her eyelashes at him subtly. "A glass wine?" Peter asks, sounding slightly breathless. Cass laughs, bringing her lips against his right ear. "How about we go somewhere quiet instead?" she murmurs against the skin. Peter isn't Cass's first kiss, and he isn't her worst. Just like all the other kisses she's received before, she doesn't care much for it, but at least he isn't forcing his tongue down her throat, so really it could be worse. That said, Cass hasn't got all night, so she's carefully angling their bodies right in front of Sebastian's booth, and seconds later, they're no mistaking the sudden but powerful surge of anger that cloys Sebastian's familiar scent, even from where Cass is standing. The angry, spicy tinge only grows stronger as he undoubtedly walks over, to the point where it fills Cass' nose and clouds her mind, just as Peter deepens their kiss. A small, embarrassing whine escapes from her, definitely caused by the kiss. She's 100% more focused on that kiss than on Sebastian's overpowering scent, obviously. "Get off her!" Sebastian snaps, pulling Peter away so abruptly his friend loses his balance and would have fallen down if not for the pillar towering behind him. His face is twisted in a sneer, his body taut with tension. But he isn't looking at Cass. This makes her want to scream. "What the hell, man?" Peter asks, eyes widening in shock. "What the fuck is your problem?" "My problem?" Sebastian looks inches from throwing in a punch. "She's 16 years old. You think it's fine taking advantage of a minor?" Cass rolls her eyes, holding back a sigh. "I didn't know she was 16. Peter winces, giving Cass a vaguely apologetic glance. "I mean, she doesn't look like she's—" He waves a hand at Cass, making Sebastian anger spiral all the more, which doesn't escape Peter's notice. Wolves know not to anger stronger, more dominant wolves. It's a survival instinct practically written in their DNAs, and being obviously no match for Sebastian, Peter visibly shrinks, noticing his rival's furious stance. "Sorry, Cass," he tells her, reaching for her arm. He's probably hoping this will appease Sebastian somewhat. It does not. "Don't you fucking look at her!" he growls, pouncing towards Peter, only to be abruptly pulled back by the arm. "Enough," Cass tells him, lacing her words with enough command she knows that'll secure his attention. "I wanted him to kiss me. Leave him alone." Sebastian's jaw clenches in aggression, though this time it is focused solely on Cass, for the first time in 3 years. His gaze is dark and brooding, his posture downright aggressive, and his scent. It goes right to Cass's head. She'd missed this, she realizes, slightly confused at the thought. "Cass," he mutters, breathing through his nose like he's trying to regain his cool. "Can't you smell how much he—" Sebastian is shaking in barely contained anger, and their faces are inches apart, his eyes shining a bright gold. Cass half considers warning him about it, because a human could notice, but she's too feeling good about finally being the focus of his hatred again. "He wanted more than to kiss you," Sebastian mutters, his fingers encircling Cass's arm like a warning that comes off as entirely too possessive. Cass's wolf is practically preening with satisfaction. "I'd be happy to let him fuck me," she smirks, purposely crude. Sebastian's grip tightens to the point of pain, and for a brief moment, every instinct in Cass's body warns her of something she can't quite understand. His eyes descend upon her bare neck with a fixated intent, and the insane thought that he's about to bite her blooms inside of Cass, whose breath freezes into her lungs. Then, Sebastian lets go of her abruptly, walking off, and she's left standing there, breathless and dumbfounded. Cass is 16, but she feels 8 again, like that day he'd stuck gum into her hair, and to horror she thinks she's going to cry. But then he turns back around, walks back to her and barks, "Our place in the woods, tomorrow night." Triumph washes over Cass. Chapter 7, Cass. Cassandra is 17 when her meetings with Sebastian in the woods take a different turn. They barely speak before they come to blows that night, Cass being quick into taunting her rival into throwing the first punch. He's furious with her, she can tell, because she'd succeed into diverting yet another one's of his friend's attention. She wants him to know she could divert anyone's attention from him should she put her mind to it. They look at Sebastian only because she allows it. But should she wish, she could steal that away from him at any given moment. Sebastian is strong, Cass is fast, the two of them skilled fighters that play on the other's weaknesses with instinctual ease, honed from years of watching and battling each other. She throws a punch, he parries, he goes for kick, she spins their body back into a safer position for her to keep her stance. Their fight is closely tied, and it seems to go on forever, their breaths and exerted pants mingling together and echoing through the woods. Cass's back is sore from colliding with tree trunks so often, her blood coursing quickly beneath her skin. "I think we're finished here," Sebastian says, earlier than expected, when it looks like neither of them will get the upper hand. There's a sort of tired resignation in his eyes that twists Cass's heart from the fear of what it might mean. "Finished?" she growls, lashing out with a quick kick of her leg which Sebastian easily avoids. The thought of them being finished has her going nearly blind with anger. How come he's still treating her like a youngling to be coddled? She's all grown up now. She matches his skills blow for blow. He doesn't have to hold himself back with her. Can't he see they're equals? She screams in rage, throwing herself at Sebastian and toppling the two of them to the ground. They struggle briefly. Their eyes meet and Cass isn't sure how the kiss begins, just that she is now grabbing at Sebastian's short hair to deepen it, drinking every moan from his lips like she would water. This is a kiss unlike any other Cass has ever shared, a reclaiming of sorts, forceful and angry. Neither of them is worried about its reception. They've both been past the point of hesitation the second their lips had made contact. Sharp teeth are nipping at Cass's lower lip, perhaps growing harsher as Sebastian realizes she can kiss just as deeply as he can. His touch becomes bruising in its ferocity, as if hoping to let Cass know if he isn't her first, then he's to be her best, which, she thinks, trying to get him closer. He most certainly is, though she'd rather die than let him know that. She brings her legs up around his waist. Sebastian leaves her mouth to suck burning kisses on her neck, his hands gripping her thighs. His name is torn from her lips in panting moans. His scent mingles with hers, enveloping her in what she's old enough now to identify as desire, thick and syrupy, and so good. She can do nothing else but buck into the solid press of his body, rejoicing at the noises he makes as she tightens her arms around his neck. She doesn't protest when he tears away her top or any other article of clothing she's wearing, helping him remove his in turn. She doesn't protest when his eyes meet hers, searching for permission, and she doesn't protest when a sharp pain courses through her shortly after. She encourages it even, fueling Sebastian on with her words, and hands and lips, for how could she bring herself to do otherwise when he is looking at her like that? Like Cass is everything. Once she is back inside the confines of her room later, alone under the covers of her bed, only then does regret begin to cloy at her throat. They shouldn't have done that, she tells herself. What they've done is something that should be kept between mates, or at the very least people who aren't natural enemies. If her father was to learn of this, not only would he probably rob Cass of any chance of becoming the next alpha, but this could start an open war with Sebastian's pack as well in retribution. And worst of all, will Sebastian even respect her as a rival now that he's had her like that? Will he look at her differently? Will he even come back to meet with her tomorrow, to fight her as he should? He does come back, and they do fight, though it doesn't last very long. Not with their body pressed so closely together, her scent still present on Sebastian's skin, mingling with his. Not with the way his eyes flutter shut for a moment, lips parting when he detects his own one imprinted on Cass. His hands on her, no less gripping, become strained with a different sort of fight, one Cass is unequipped to rebuke, unwilling even if Sebastian is going to keep looking at her like he'll never look at anything else ever again. The following night, their pretense of a fight is even shorter, and the one after that, they don't even pretend. Their lips colliding instantly into a demanding kiss, their hands roaming over each other's, bodies hurried and demanding, the simplest of touch causing Cass to shiver. There's no pain anymore, only pleasure she hadn't thought could exist, and new emotions just as intense and all-consuming as anger, though she doesn't know how to name them. Every night, Cass comes back home telling herself this was the last time, that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. It makes no sense for them to be doing this. It's bound to ruin everything. Cass's prospects, Sebastian's, the fragile peace between their packs. But it's not like either of them can ask their elders for permission, Cass knows. It would never be given. Never. Their parents, their alphas, have hated each other for generation. For her and Sebastian, it was always either be enemies at best or be stranger at worst. Anything else should never be. Could never be. At least not in the open. Cass thinks she always knew. She just hadn't realized. Hadn't wanted to realize. And now, it's too late. The following day, as soon as the sun sets, she finds herself growing restless, running away to the woods, to Sebastian. The second she's certain no will notice, eager for his hands to be on her again, to feel his grip turn punishing when their lips meet again after being apart for the day. She thinks, perhaps after some time, the novelty of this experience will fade, and with it, any desire on her part for it to continue. She doesn't dare think of how it would make her feel should it dull on Sebastian's end. She cannot, will not think of that. For once it does, what will she become? Adrian isn't in the shop the next time Cass comes to visit. His human friend is alone, going through books distractedly when Cass enters, heart beating wild. "When will he be back?" she asks, closing her eyes in resignation when Iris tells her he's gone off somewhere for God knows how long. I need him to free me of this insanity. She is distressed, fevered almost as she begins to pace around the shop like a beast trapped in cage. "What did you want him to do exactly?" Iris asks, carefully. "I want to be rid of my—" Cass can't bring herself to say the words and falls quiet, heat grazing her features. What does she want to be rid of exactly? Her desire, her guilt, her shame. "Never mind," she says eventually. She exists the shop and rush because deep down she knows it is none of these things. The only thing she should be wishing to be rid of is her love. Chapter 8, Adrian. There's nothing Adrian hates more than having to interact with others. That's because everyone he interacts with are potential clients, people looking to make a wish, people with desires. Adrian is very good at reading people's desires. Comes with the job. And people's wants usually fall into two categories. Selfish wants, which means Adrian will have to cater to ill-meaning, cruel desires and almost certainly hurt other people in the process. He's seen it all. Power-hungry egomaniacs, controlling fools. And then there are selfless wants. People who want to use their wish to help someone they care about or to make the world a better place. Adrian knows their hearts are in the right place, which is all the more devastating when these people end up losing what they love the most. Though at least, this second category of clients is more easily deterred than the first. Because the selfless clients have good intentions, because they aren't driven by selfish or cruel desires, they are more likely to see reason and give up the idea of making a wish that might make everything worse in the long run. However, when they do not, Adrian sighs. According to Iris, the shifter girl had come again today, Cassandra. She's been visiting Adrian since she was little, practically her entire life, really. She's not a bad person, Adrian thinks, but she is scared. Born to hate rather than to love, despite what her heart tells her. He was amused by the child once. She had spunk and she was brave, if a little naive like all children were. Adrian tended to see everyone he met as a child even if they were old for their lifespan. He was after all immortal, and in comparison, everyone appeared young and inexperienced in his eyes. So he didn't think of Cass as particularly more naive than the rest of her kind, even when she'd been all but 8 years old. but he'd had good hope that in time the kid would grow out of the idea of making a wish. But every time Adrian manages to convince her to give up, she always comes back, always more desperate, always harder to send away. "I think she's in love with that Sebastian guy," Iris proclaimed, that night after she mentioned Cass coming back, looking all the world like she thought she was making a particularly astute observation. "You don't say," Adrian replies, aiming for neutral but coming off as sarcastic and immediately cursing himself for it. Iris enjoys sarcasm is the thing, though she likes to pretend otherwise. It gives her mind something to focus on, rather than the gaping void her father has left in her life. Adrian knows she enjoyed it, which is precisely why he'd promised himself to stop using it. He doesn't want Iris to confuse her appreciation for sarcasm with appreciation for Adrian's company. She might end up trusting him then. She doesn't seem like the type to make a wish. She has close to zero desires or wants out of life. Iris is a particularly cynical human. Adrian intends to keep her that way. "Shut up!" she'd snapped, right on command, though her lips had twitched into a small smile. When she smiles, Adrian is somewhat reminded of what it was like to smile too. He doesn't like it, and yet, it keeps happening. "It's not going to end well," Iris tells him, speaking of Cassandra. "Probably not, no," Adrian replies, though he isn't sure what he is referring to. That's the thing with interacting with people. They end up growing on you. He's seen Cass grow up. Sometimes she likes to come into his shop not because she really plans to make a wish, but only because she enjoys getting a reaction of Adrian. So, if she does end up making a wish, it'll be all too terrible having to grant it. "Can I sleep here tonight?" Iris asks casually when they're done with dinner. "No," Adrian thinks. "Yes," he hears himself say. He doesn't want to think about what it would be like having to grant Iris a wish. The thought alone makes him wish he'd never met her. Chapter 9. Cassandra. Cass is 18 when a real fight erupts between members of her pack and Sebastian's. Later, she cannot even remember what started it. She'd been with her brother and other pack mates, hanging out in a bar. One of them, a male named Finn she's grown up with and is close to, teases her about something, putting an arm around her shoulders, a familiar gesture she's used to and think nothing of. In fact, perhaps he hadn't even done it, she thinks to herself, lying in her bed. Perhaps that had been yesterday or the day before. She knows, in the back of her mind, that Sebastian is here somewhere in the bar. She hasn't seen him, but she recognizes his scent, and has seen a couple of wolves from his pack roaming the place, hoarding the pool table. "They've been at it for hours," Finn complains to Ronan, who just shrugs good-naturedly. Unlike Cass, her brother isn't one for conflict. "We could ask them to join in on the game," he suggests, making everyone groan around their table. "What?" Ronan insists, giving Cass a firm glance. "Aren't we past all the petty squabbles from before? Come on." Reluctantly, Finn follows him towards the pool table, briefly squeeing Cass' shoulder as he passes her. She exchanges a joke or two with the remaining members of the group, takes her sip of her beer, and then a loud crashing noise diverts her attention to the back of the bar. She sees Finn gripping at Sebastian's shirt, sneering at him as he backs him up against a wall, his scent furious and menacing. Cass is on her feet, getting between the two in an instant. "What are you doing?" she barks at Finn. "He smells like you," her packmate replies, to her great horror. "Why does he smell like you?" Cass's entire world stops. This is it, she thinks. This is the moment it all ends. The moment they get exposed. The moment her future dissolves like dust in her hands. She'll lose her father's respect, her pack, and most importantly, she'll lose Sebastian. If they're found out, his parents might banish him for his crimes in order to avoid war. Most likely, though, they'll just make him take a mate and put the rumors to rest. She's heard they've been looking for candidates for a little while now, Sebastian being of age. Would he even fight for her? She wonders traitorously, meeting his eyes. She wants to cry because that shouldn't even matter. Their packs should come first. The pack always come first. It will come first for Sebastian. And she hates that she resents him for it, hates that her heart is begging her to put him above all else. Suddenly, amongst the anguish and the fear, comes clarity. This is an inescapable situation to which there is only one solution. They can't be found out. They won't. Cass's eyes catch Sebastian's. He looks like he's about to reply when she cuts him short. We met briefly, behind the bar. We had a little squabble, that's all. Cass gets out quickly. Obviously, that's not what happened. If he smells like her, it's because they were together the night before, and all the ones before that. It's a miracle no one has caught on to it before. But Cass thinks it's because everyone knows she and Sebastian used to fight. They've probably assumed that's what they've been doing, and she needs them to keep assuming tonight. Except, Ronan frowns, suddenly looking so aggressive even Cass is stunned by it. It isn't like him to display so much aggression. But the idea of his sister having being attacked awaken his protective instincts, and Ronan might hate conflict, but he's nothing if not protective. "You attacked her alone?" He spits furiously. "Are you insane? You're practically the alpha now. You could have hurt her." "No, he couldn't." Cass protests, though Ronan ignores her, pushing Sebastian back when the latter tries to explain himself, sending her an annoyed glance. "We didn't fight," he begins. Cass's heart freezes in her chest at the thought that he could tell his brother and her packmates what it is exactly they'd most likely been doing instead. "Yes, we did," she snaps without thinking. Ronan screams in rage, throwing himself at Sebastian. Immediately, one of his friends intercept him, tackling Ronan to the ground. Even Cass finds herself having to parry a hit, coming at her from one of the girls that had been hanging out with Sebastian, swiftly getting her to back off when she notices how many humans are staring at their group with shocked attention. That doesn't escape Sebastian's notice either. "Enough!" he exclaims, stilling every member of his pack, and to Cass's displeasures, ones from her own too. Though, his command isn't enough to deter Ronan. "Stay the fuck away from my sister!" he growls, pulling Cass after him. She briefly glances back at Sebastian, but he avoids her gaze, making her heart sink. Can't he see she made the right call? That she did it for them? "What were you thinking?" he exclaims when they meet, later into the night. "Telling your pack we'd gotten into a fight? Seriously, Cass." "What else was I supposed to say? Finn smelled me on you. What if he'd realized—" "What then?" Sebastian growls, turning away. "It wouldn't have been worse than them thinking an alpha attacked you alone." Heat burning her cheeks, Cass stomps her feet on the ground, feeling utterly powerless. "You're not alpha yet, and I could take you, you know I could." Sebastian's eyes are furious when they settle on her. "It doesn't matter. My father is going to make me alpha in just a few days. I can't just be picking fights with random wolves, especially not ones from a pack that doesn't get along with mine." "I'm not a random wolf," Cass screeches, pushing his shoulders aggressively. "You know what I mean," Sebastian retorts with a sneer. "Do I?" Cass says, unable to hold back the hurt tempering her words. Sebastian's gaze softens for a brief moment before he purses his lips in resolve. "Cass, you're the one that panicked at the idea of everyone finding out about us, not me," he says with a helpless shrug. "What am I supposed to think? Especially when you let all these other wolves touch you, right in front of me." "There is no us. You and I aren't together, Sebastian," she snaps, heart in throat, panic clenching her gut. "I can do what I want with whoever I—" Sebastian grips her jaw forcefully, making her wince and forcing her eyes to meet his own. They've turned gold, betraying his anger. "You're mine," he growls. "I'm not," Cass snaps, batting his hand away. He catches hers between his finger anyway, pulling her to him more carefully. "You could be," he says, sagging his forehead against hers softly. "I want you to be, Cass. I love—" Cass's heart does something complicated, like a piece of it is suddenly going missing, pulled from her by force and perfectly against her will to fly right into Sebastian's hands. Is this a trick? He just said she was a random wolf, throwing his title in her face like it's supposed to matter. She's going to be an alpha too. Doesn't that count for something? She's not his to claim, for what would it mean for her if he did? Her father is going to choose her. Her father is counting on her. Her father and her pack had once lost something to Sebastian's, and she will not stand to be the one making them lose again. Especially if this is all a trick. Why would Sebastian say this only now, and not the day before when he'd held her in his arms? or all the ones before that when he'd had plenty of occasions. "Don't," she snaps, pulling away, throat tight. "We're nothing. You're nothing to me." Sebastian pales, searches her face, looks like he wants to pull her back towards him. Cass finds herself kind of wishing he would. "Fine," he spits, turning around abruptly and walking away. Cass thinks of calling after him, her mouth opening on its own accord, but nothing comes past her lips. Is this it? The moment where he grows tired of her? The next day, Sebastian answers her father's call to discuss the altercation from the bar and apologizes for approaching Cass, swearing it won't happen again. It doesn't. Chapter 10. Cassandra. Cass is 20 when her father lets her and her brother know he's decided to make her alpha. It is everything she's ever wanted and worked all her life for, and she'd pictured this moment in her head many times growing up, imagining the pride and joy she'd feel upon hearing the words. She hadn't expected to feel nothing at all. She's felt numb and empty ever since that night Sebastian has walked away from her, but she'd managed to keep her head above water, convincing herself it would all be worth it when she'd finally become alpha. Once she'd reached this goal, then surely Sebastian would, but Cass wasn't sure what she expected him to do anymore. What did she even want him to do? All she knew was that his absence was unbearable, its weight cloying more and more at her heart with each passing day. And that very morning she'd learned of his engagement. He was to be mated to a girl from another pack soon. Cass barely remembers what she looks like, that other girl. She's never paid her much attention. She is the daughter of an alpha and came from an influent pack. She is somewhat pretty. But could she fight with Sebastian like Cass could? Could she beat him in a hunt? Could she make love to him as well as Cass could, learn his body and what he loved the way she had? Would she take care of him and make him happy? "Cass?" her father asks, tentatively because Cass realizes she hasn't said a word. Ronan is also looking at her curiously, surprised at not seeing erupt in joy at finally achieving her dreams. "Thank you, father," she mumbles, lowering her head. "I'm honored. I won't let you down." She wants to cry. She should be happy. This is everything she's ever wanted. Why isn't she happy? "Cass will be alpha, but I'd like to entrust you with something important too, Ronan," their father pursues, though not without sending a couple of wary glances towards Cass. He gets up, reaches for a book in his library, and, lowering it, unlocks a small safe hidden behind the confines of the bookcase. From it, their father pulls a dagger, covered with a protective sheath. "This dagger, I trust Ronan to make use of," their father says. "It's a powerful weapon that goes back generations in our family, and one of the artifacts often being renegotiated in our dwellings with Alpha Sebastian's pack." Cass tenses at the name, making Ronan frown, though he quickly averts his gaze back to their father. "Be careful with it, son, as this dagger has the power to kill any wolf with only one prick of the skin. It's laced with a powerful poison conceived for the very purpose. Our ancestors used it in many battles. I trust you to keep it safe." Ronan nods seriously, though Cass pays no mind to any of it. As you both know, Sebastian will be taking the daughter of a powerful alpha as his mate, which he claims won't affect his judgment when it comes to making alliances, but which we all know most definitely will, their father concludes grimly. "You'll have a lot of work on your hands to make sure our pack thrives as much as theirs and doesn't succumb to the influence of an other." Her father's words ring in Cass's head as she heads to bed, though not the part about her being alpha, or Ronan about receiving a weapon powerful for one reason or another. She doesn't care that they'll have a lot of work in the upcoming years. All that she cares about is figuring out if Sebastian loves his mate-to-be or not. They are all invited to the engagement party, which takes place within his home 2 days later. Cass wears her most beautiful dress and arranges her hair in a sophisticated updo that leaves her long neck bare, hoping that, if anything, Sebastian will at least think back on their time together once tonight, and feel if not as much regret as she does, then at least something. But it is her who stares at him across the reception hall all night, dancing with his fiancée, making speeches or jokes that has everyone's attention. He doesn't look at her once. Cass feels something die inside of her, crippling even further with each glance Sebastian denies her, breathless with every touch he gives another. His finger on the back of this girl's dress, his lips whispering in her ear. What could he be telling her but words of love, words maybe Cass could have heard if only she'd been better and strong and more interesting. Though in reality, perhaps it was never about her not being strong enough. Perhaps it was not about being his equal at all. Perhaps it only came down to the fact that she'd been born into a pack set to despise his, while his own pack hated her own in return. When it's getting late enough that she can't delay going to greet the happy couple any longer, Cass forces her body to move, though it feels like it's been draped in lead rather than red silk. Sebastian is busy whispering something into his fiancée's ear that make her eyes sparkle with pleasure. It shakes something loose from Cass's chest. "Hello." She greets them, embarrassed at how weighted and dull her voice sounds. "On behalf of all my pack, I would like to congratulate you on your engagement." The fiancé smiles brightly at her, offering Cass warm thanks, laced with a happiness that is unbearable to witness knowing what has caused it. Beside her, Sebastian's posture is relaxed, his face stern in perfect, cool indifference as he politely inclines his head at Cass. "Thank you," he replies curtly before moving his fiancée away for a dance. Cass is left standing there, mouth close to gaping, at the normality of this exchange. She'd expected disdain or at least some form of dislike. How dare Sebastian acts like they're strangers, like everything between them could simply be ignored as a mere detail from the past, instead of the fostering wound that is still very much to Cass. She grins and bears the humiliation with the strength she's been well taught, but which almost fails her to many times to count, until she cannot bear it any longer, and runs inside a nearby library to save herself from feeling so much pain if only for a short while. There, she exhales a long, painful breath, closing her eyes briefly, hoping to regain her bearings and, even better, think of a good excuse to leave this party early without looking a complete and utter. The noise of a door closing shut snaps her eyes back open onto Sebastian's silhouette, entering the library, eyes searching and, most importantly, alone. "What are you doing here?" she asks before she can think of something better to say. "What am I doing here? You're in my house," Sebastian replies curtly. Cassandra says nothing, turning her head to look at a row of books beside her in perfect silence. She may have stared at Sebastian all evening, but now in the privacy in this room, with nothing and no one between them and what lies there, she finds herself unable to look him in the eye. "I should be asking you that, don't you think?" Sebastian taunts, humor and something darker lacing his words. "It isn't like you to hide away from a crowd." Cass can't help but flinch. "My father chose me to be our next alpha," she replies, swaying the title like a shield, aimed to defend though what she cannot say. Sebastian's full lips curl into the mockery of a smile. "Well, congratulations then," he says, shrugging his shoulders. "It's everything you've always wanted, isn't it?" Cass shoots him a dark look, which Sebastian returned tenfold. "Don't act like this hasn't been your goal either," she says, chin raised up. "You can't blame me for—" "I don't blame you," Sebastian interrupts, his mouth in a tight line. Cass knows the feel of this mouth against her own. Her stomach plummets at the thought of never knowing it again. "Then what is this?" she forces herself to say. "Why did you follow me here? Have you come to gloat?" "Why would I gloat?" Sebastian's expression does something complicated. There are many things Cass wants to say, all of them at the tip of her tongue. But then Sebastian shakes his head, turning away. "Have a good evening, Cassandra. I'll see you at the next alpha meeting, yeah?" He turns back to the door and is about to leave when it's all Cass can do not to blurt out what she ends up blurting out anyway. "Do you love her?" she hears herself ask with such desperation she barely recognizes herself. Sebastian's shoulders visibly tense as he freezes in her tracks. "Do I love her?" he asks, turning back around, a sneer twisting his features. "Isn't that obvious? I'm marrying her, aren't I?" Cass feels like she's been slapped, even more so under the intense scrutiny of his gaze, one she searched for her entire life but that she's suddenly unable to withstand. "All right, well then, I'm happy for you," she murmurs. "Are you?" Sebastian scoffs. "What's it to you how I feel anyway? We were never anything to each other. You've made that abundantly clear." The words are designed to hurt, and they do, hitting against all of Cass's defenses with a precision that leaves her shaking. "So now you're going to act like there was never anything between us, then?" She shakes her head, hurt lacing her words. "If that's how it's going to be, then go. I have nothing to say to—" "You're the one that always acted like it was nothing, like it embarrassed you to be with me," Sebastian barks. He is inches from her now. How did he get so close so quickly? Cass's mind is spinning from getting such a strong whiff of his scent, so close and so angry. "I don't remember you pouring out your feelings at every chance either," she argues, some fight left in her still, though it's that of an animal trapped in a corner. "I was the one that always had to earn your attention, some way or another." "Earn my attention?" There's hardly any inflection in his voice at all. "You didn't earn anything. You always had it. I've always looked at you. Always. Ever since we were young." "No, you didn't. You'd look, but you wouldn't see me," Cass argues, desperate, heat wild. "I've watched, seen, and thought only of you for as long as I can remember." Sebastian growls, disgust lacing his words, like he cannot stand them and must get rid of them. "But I'm done now. It's over." His voice is mean and scathing, and stirs something in Cass. She raises her hand to swipe her eyes, because she's crying. She doesn't remember when it started. "It'll never be over," she tells him darkly. "Never. You know it. And I know it." And before Sebastian can reply, she grabs his face and their mouths collapse into a bruising kiss, an even harsher version of the ones they used to share. Sebastian's teeth and tongue laying claim to Cass immediately. She sighs into it, giving ground and allowing him further in. She wants to give him everything. Everything he could ask for. His scent is flaring with hunger, one of his hands gliding to the small of her back, the other twisting into her hair, pulling back the pins that had been keeping it in places. Long, heavy blonde curls fall onto her shoulders, which Sebastian grab and stare at in awe, before burying his nose into. "I want nothing to do with you." He sighs, eyes closing shut as he breathes her in. "I love you," she replies, choking on her next words when she sees him flinches like she's just hurt him. "No," he says, stepping away, refusing to meet her gaze. "Enough." Her mouth opens in protests, and she tries to hold on to him, but he flees the room without looking back, leaving her alone and feeling as exposed and alone as ever. Later, she comes to the magician shop, though she realizes it is closed, and for good reason, the time nearing midnight. She doesn't know it, but she'll be making her wish the very next day. Chapter 11, Cassandra. Cass is still 20 when she wakes up in her bed in the early hours of the morning, surprised and confused at the feel of wet lips sucking bruises on her neck. She's rather certain she fell asleep alone and should feel fear and distress at the type of wake-up call she's been subjected to, except she feels nothing but warmth and hazy pleasure that is building into something more heated with every second. A familiar scent is enveloping her, mixing with hers in a way she hasn't experienced in years, but has only craved all the more. She becomes aware of the hard press of a body against hers, of hands gripping her hips, but the touch feels so natural and right, she doesn't even think about moving away. "Sebastian?" she asks, breathlessly, feeling him smile against her neck. She meets his eyes through the darkness, his blown wide, dark with desire and something else she cannot place immediately. "What are you doing here?" she asks, hesitantly grazing his cheek with her fingers. Despite it being unwise, him being here uninvited in the middle of the night, she doesn't want him to think his presence is unwelcome or worst, to see him leave should she say the wrong thing. Her mind is still hazy with sleep, and she should probably be more rational about their situation, but she didn't think she'd be seeing him again so soon, and certainly not in this context. Not with him pulling her towards him, claiming her mouth into a slow, though desperately heated kiss. The press of his tongue against her own as her moaning in a delight, though the taste of it makes her pull back in surprise. "You've been drinking," she accuses, puzzlement twisting her features. "Maybe," he chuckles, snuggling her neck. "I was celebrating my engagement, remember?" Cass runs her fingers through his hair, inhaling his scent briefly, as she builds up the courage to push him off of her as she should. "About that engagement?" she says, somewhat reluctantly, especially when she feels Sebastian hands roaming her bare leg. "Shouldn't you be with your fiancé instead of here?" Sebastian mutters something incoherent against her skin that has Cass rolling her eyes, forcing him to back away by grabbing at his hair. "What was that?" she asks again. "I said, I don't have a fiancé," he replies, looking very much like he's about to kiss her again. "I broke off our engagement." He moves to lower his mouth back onto hers, but Cass moves away, making him groan. "Why?" she asks, searching his gaze. It is loving, though dazed and hazy with intoxication. "Didn't want her," he replies, grinding down against Cass and making her gasp. "Sebastian," she protests with a frown. "You said you loved me?" he complains, mouthing the words against her lips. "How could I mate with another when you love me?" He bends down to leave a trail of kisses onto her collarbone, and she gasps, both from his words and his touch, forgetting all about being too loud for a short moment, tears welling her eyes. "I thought you wanted nothing to do with me," she protests, though without much force. "Say that you love me again," Sebastian replies, eyes crazed with pent-up desire. "Say it again, Cass, please." She cradles his face between her hands. "I love you," she murmurs, meeting his gaze, watching his pupils dilate even further with pleased satisfaction. She'd always needed him to look at her. Her entire life had been about making sure he'd look only at her. His teeth graze at her skin dangerously. Cass's scent spikes up in response, which Sebastian doesn't fail to notice, his ministrations becoming all the more pressing. "Cass," he sighs as she pulls him back for a kiss. "I can't do this anymore. I love you. I need you." She nods against his shoulder, unable to stop herself from pulling him closer. "Then you shall have me," she promises, bucking up against him despite herself. "Just maybe not right now, in my parents' house, while you're drunk." But he only starts pulling at her nightgown more urgently, apparently stuck on the first part of her sentence rather than the second. "I've been going wild, thinking of you tonight," Sebastian insists, pinning her now naked body into the mattress. "Tonight. Every night. All the time." He claims her mouth again, moaning when it's Cass's tongue which nibs at his own first. His fingers feel scorching, his scent wild and dizzying to the point where she wonders if she isn't the one who's been drinking. She must be, for when she feels his teeth against her neck, she pushes his head down harder, urging him on. She wants him to claim her, she realizes. She wants to be his mate and claim him in return. But, she thinks to herself a little belatedly, not like this when he's not himself. "Sebastian!" She gasps, her toes curling in pleasure at the increasing pressure on her neck. "Don't! Please, stop!" Though she says this only baring her neck to him further, mind saying no but body already giving in. His teeth sink into her skin and Cass screams. The next thing she knows, her own brother's scream joins hers, and suddenly Sebastian is gasping above her, features contorting in pain. "Get off her!" Ronan yells, appearing in Cassandra's field of vision, stunning her in place. How did he get here? What did he see or hear? She needs to explain. But then, Sebastian is sagging against her with another grunt of pain, and, trying to get him upright, she realizes something's wrong when her finger feels something wet and warm dripping down his back. Blood, she understands, recognizing the metallic tang of it before she even stares at her own red-colored hands in horror. "Cass, are you okay?" Ronan asks, fear twisting his features as he tries to remove Sebastian's body off of her. Did he force himself? Fear and shock stuns Cass silent. She carefully tries to move Sebastian to his side and catch his gaze. He looks stunned, his jaw clenching from the pain of his wound. "What did you do?" She screeches towards her brother, while carefully settling her mate's head onto her knees. "Cass, he was going to force himself on you," Ronan replies, furry lacing his words. "I heard you tell him no." Horror fills Cass's heart upon understanding what her brother had assumed. And furthermore, when she recognizes the dagger he's holding in his hands, and with which he'd literally stabbed Sebastian in the back. "Is that father's?" she asks, fearing the answer. Ronan purses his lips, doubt flashing behind his eyes. "He was going to hurt you," he repeats, like he's trying to convince himself he'd done the right thing. "No, he wasn't. I love him, Ronan. Sebastian and I have been lovers for years." Her brother's eyes widen, but she forgets about him for a moment, when Sebastian gasps out her name, grabbing onto her wrist weakly. "Cass," he murmurs, losing consciousness. She shushes him hurriedly, running her hand through his hair. "Stay with me. Don't fall asleep," she begs him, desperation cloying her throat when he grunts, his eyelids fluttering shut. Her eyes meet her brother's, and, in his own, she can read the accusations, fear, and interrogations, but they're not twins for nothing, and he knows now not the time for that. "I'm gonna go get father!" he exclaims, jumping to his feet. Chapter 12. Cassandra. Cassandra would make her wish in exactly 2 hours, but before that, one last conversation would take place. "How could you been so foolish? Both of you?" Their father is, unsurprisingly, furious when presented with the alpha from their rival pack, lying unconscious and half-naked in their daughter's bed. "How could you let him come here?" Cass's father sneers at her before turning to Ronan. "And you? Using this weapon on him? When you could have just thrown him off your sister?" "I thought he was going—" Ronan can't bring himself to say the words, shaming, twisting his features. Their father rubs a tired hand on his face. "This is catastrophic," he says, more to himself than to them. "One of you, if not both, are going to have to face consequences for—" He waves his hand towards Sebastian's unconscious body, currently being tightly held by Cass. "Our pack's reputation is going to take a serious hit, and let's not even get into the monetary damages we'll need to—" "Are you really talking about money and reputation while he's laying here dying?" Cassandra snaps, appalled. Sebastian's face is pale and glistening with feverish sweat, his breathing labored. Only sheer will, the desire to keep him alive at all costs, stops her from crumbling down. "Is there nothing that can heal him?" she asks her father, almost reluctantly, for she's afraid to hear the answer. It comes nonetheless, terrible in its finality. "None," he says, a slightly more emphatic look crossing his features. "I'm sorry, Cass." "Why would you even keep such a dangerous weapon at home?" she growls, tears prickling her eyes. "Why not bury it?" Her father shushes her with a snarl. "I keep it to protect my family," he replies, making Cass snarl. "Sebastian is like family," she says. "He's my mate now." Her father's eyes widen in anger. "Your mate? How—" "The usual way." Cass sniffs, kissing Sebastian's forehead when she hears him moan in pain. She watches in disgusted consternation as her father begins to pace the room, the beginning of a plan seemingly forming itself in his mind. "We can work with that," he mutters under his breath. "Sebastian's an alpha. He forced his way into your room at night, forced himself on you and claimed you. Your brother defended you." "I wanted him to claim me," Cass protests, furious. "Well, you'll keep that to yourself if you want you and your brother to live," her father barked, lacing his words with all the alpha command he can muster, which, to his credit, is a lot, Cass feeling the order freezing her body all the way down her spine. "Ronan, come with me. Cass, stay here with him. We'll need to prepare for a council meetings and stand for trial. If we get a head start and have the packs come to us instead of waiting for Sebastian's people to confront us, it'll look better." Cass is left alone, faced with her desolation and her mate's dying breaths. She holds his face against her chest, murmuring comforting words to him in the faint hope that they should reach him somehow, and make him hold on a little longer. "I'm going to fix this," she tells him. "You're going to be okay, I promise." Cass bangs on the magician's front door as the sun barely rises in the sky, begging for him to open up for what feels like hours. In reality, it barely lasts over 5 minutes, because Iris is a light sleeper and quick to rush down and let her in. "Please," Cass begs me, grabbing her hand. "We don't have much time. Go get your boss." Adrian follows Iris into the living room a short while later, hair a mess though it often is, only to be greeted by Cass's terrified though determined gaze. "This time, there'll be no changing my mind," she declares, standing up from her chair, clenching her fingers. "You're going to grant me a wish. I don't care what it costs." Chapter 13. Cassandra. Cass hasn't aged a day when she comes back to the pack's headquarters, but she feels like she's become an old woman. Her body is sore and slow, each movement heavy and difficult. Colors, smells, and sound all seem different now, dulled, like she's entered a new, watered-down dimension, one in which she feels cold quickly. But mostly she feels empty and alone, and barely realizes she's arrived back at the pack when her brother rushes out of their home, waving at her excitedly. "Sebastian's awake," he tells her, grabbing her hands. "He's fine. They're discussing what happened with Father and the others' alphas, but since he isn't sick anymore, it's all going to be—" "Cass?" Ronan interrupts himself when he realizes her sister's distant, empty gaze. "Did you hear me?" She heard him, and she does feel infinitely better with the confirmation that Sebastian is healed, though she had no doubt he would be, since it's what she'd wished for. "Cass," Ronan insists, grabbing her shoulders. "What's with the long face? You're still angry with me? You can relax. Your mate's fine." "He isn't my mate," Cass replies, staring down at her feet, which she only realized now are bare. "But I thought you said—" "That was before?" Cass says, interrupting Ronan and moving away. Behind them, their mother is exiting the house and sprinting towards them. "Cassandra, where have you been?" she says when she's reached them. "They're asking for you inside. What's this I hear about you and Sebastian being mates?" "We're not," Cass replies, tone flat. Their voices sound different now, she thinks. It's like when you hear yourself on a film and don't recognize the sound of your own voice, except it's like this with everything. "What's wrong?" Cass's mother says, taking her face between her hands. "What happened, baby?" Cass doesn't reply, keeping her eyes firmly down. It's not that she doesn't want to, it's that the words are stuck in her throat. She thinks, maybe if she doesn't say them, it won't be true. "Cass!" her mother insists, before finally it clicks and her eyes widen in horror. "Oh my God!" she exclaims, softly at first, and then more loudly. There's ringing in Cass's ears, and her feet are cold against the grass. Her mother is screaming in horror, and Cass can't bear to meet her eyes. Ronan joins in on her mother's questions, she thinks, but she isn't sure. He's probably distressed, for he must have realized by now, she thinks. Before, she would have known his distress, for it would have pervaded his scent. But Cass can't smell him anymore. She can barely smell anything, and it's so strange and frightening. "Your wish is for your mate to recover?" the magician had asked, eyes growing somber like he'd understood this time. After so many years, he wouldn't change Cass's mind. "Yes," she'd nodded, tears welling up. "He's dying." Adrian and I had shared a look before he'd spoke again. "I've told you the rules before. If I grant your wish, I'll have to take what matters most to you." Cass had frowned. "Sebastian is what matters most to me. Does that mean, if you save him, you'll only kill him later?" Adrian had shaken his head. "No, I don't take people's lives. But if he's what matters most to you, and again I say if, because you can never know for sure what it'll be, then what will happen is that you'll probably have to be apart. He'll be alive, but not with you." Cass's shoulders had sagged. If the choice was to let Sebastian die, or resign herself to be apart from him, she'd take the second option. She'd still had hope that somehow they could find their way back to one another. She'd been scared her entire life of not being able to love him freely, but she was done letting that fear control her. She was determined to be with him. "Do it! Save him!" she'd then insisted. "It's what I wish for." Adrian had reached for her hand, closing his eyes, and remained silent for a second. Then he'd let go of it, abruptly. "You're with child," he'd said, looking conflicted. "What?" Cassandra had looked taken aback, full of frightened disbelief. She'd remained still and silent for a moment, eyes drifting back and forth through different random areas of the shop. I can't be. It hasn't been even 24 hours since we've last... She interrupts herself, realization dawning her features. You can feel it, Adrian had asked, eyeing her carefully. Cassandra had nodded reluctantly. I think so, she'd reply. Or at least, my wolf can. It feels protective already. What does it mean? Iris interrupted. Is there a risk the wish could harm the child? Adrian's eyes had looked conflicted for a moment. I'll tell you what it is I'll be taking before you make the wish, he tells Cassandra. Iris gasped at that. But you said the rules are that the client can't know what they'll give before they make the wish. She'd begun to protest, falling silent as Adrian's cold eyes snapped to her face. It's fine, he repeats, tone flat. Cass's gaze had jumped from the girl to the magician, slightly startled but too preoccupied with her situation to be deterred. We don't have much time, she'd pressed. Adrian had grasped her hand again, and paled as he'd shut his eyes to concentrate on his magic. What matters most to you is being Sebastian's mate, he'd said, making Cass nod, like she'd expected as such. So, I'll be making sure you'll never be able to be mates by taking away the very thing that makes it possible. Cass had frozen in place, as understanding dawned her features. You mean my wolf? She'd ask eventually, in a toneless voice. You're going to make her human? Iris had surmised. Yes, Adrian had said, as Cass had put her hand on her stomach, looking very much heartbroken. But my baby, he'll have a wolf, surely, she'd whispered, eyes brimming with tears. There's a good chance, yes, Adrian had replied gravely. You probably won't be able to raise him. He looked paler than usually, slightly ashen. The result of breaking the rules to tell Cass about what she'd been losing, I'd realized, but kept to myself for our client had enough on her plate as it was. Cass had closed her eyes, taking a deep, though shaking breath. Do it, she said in a toneless voice. Grant my wish. Cass hadn't felt her wolf leave her body. 1 minute she could feel it howling painfully against her broken mind. The next it was gone like it had never been there. It hadn't hurt exactly, but the abrupt dulling of her senses, the uncomfortable physical sensations she wasn't used to had made her gasp in shock. But mostly, it was this absence, this nothingness in her mind, that had made her sway on her feet and scream. Now she was back with her pack, but she couldn't sense them, guess their emotions through their sense, know by instincts how to act or react to them. It was frightening, but not as devastating as feeling so alone and broken, like she'd lost not just a limb, but an entire part of herself. How is this possible? Ronan asks, searching Cass's face while her mother begins to cry, alerting her father, whose head erupts from the house to check what's going on. It was the magician, she explains in toneless voice because it doesn't matter now. The one who grants wishes and lives in town? You went to see him? Cassandra doesn't hear, feel, or scent Sebastian's presence immediately, so it's slightly disconcerting when he suddenly enters her field of vision. At first, there's a bright, hopeful smile on his face at the sight of her, but it falls immediately when he meets Cass's gaze. What's wrong? He asks, quickly making his way to them, followed by other alphas who must have been here to judge what had happened earlier, with him and Ronan. Did this magician do this to you? Take your wolf? Ronan asks, looking pale and shocked. Cass nods. I asked him to, she quickly explains, before their brother or father can get it in their head to attack Adrian for what he'd done. Why would you do that? Her brother laments. Sebastian reaches them, pushing his way to her. He takes her face between his hands. Look at me, he asks her, but she doesn't. It hurts to look at him knowing he'll never be hers now. That's how he healed, her father's voices, sending Sebastian a somber gaze. Magic. Sebastian ignores him, focused on softly asking Cass to look at him again, grazing her cheek with his thumb. She pulls away. I'd like to be alone now, she tells them, walking away. She flees before anybody can retort, ignoring the fact that with her being human now, they could all easily catch up to her. It probably means something that none of them do. Chapter 14. Cassandra. Cass is 21 when Sebastian insists on seeing her. It's been a week since the incident, one during which her birthday has come and gone, unnoticed. She doesn't notice much, though she vaguely hears her brother arguing with her lover outside her door. "She doesn't want to see anybody," Ronan says, or something along those lines. "I don't care. It's been days. I need to talk to her." Sebastian insists, muttering something else Cass can't make out, before bursting into her room. Cass is sitting by the window still, hugging her knees, her hair a loose mess against her back. Sebastian's eyes widen when he sees her, and she thinks she must make a sorry sight, with the bags under her eyes and blank human smell. "Cass," Sebastian says, like the words has somehow unlocked his ability to breathe again. He drops to his knees beside her, pulling her in his arms. Cass tells herself not to get used to it. "What are you doing here?" she asks, in that dead, blank inflection that won't seem to leave her voice. "What do you think?" Sebastian sighs, breathing her in. "Do I smell strange?" She can't help but ask, the tremor of something shaking her words. Sebastian buries his face in her hair. "You smell like you always do, but fainter," he replies, cautiously. Cass sighs, closing her eyes. "It's good that you're here," she tells him, feeling his shoulder sag in relief up hearing the words. "I've been wanting to talk to you." Sebastian lets out a startled laugh. "You've been wanting to talk? Is that why everyone's been forcefully keeping me away from you this last week?" Cass ignores his last comment because if she doesn't speak now, she doesn't think she'll be able to get the words out, even though she's been preparing to say them, repeating them in her mind practically ever since she'd made her wish. "I'm sorry I disrupted your engagement," she says, looking outside her window because she can't bear to look at Sebastian. He laughs again. "Don't be," he begins, but Cass interrupts. "I'm sure if you try hard enough, your mate-to-be will reconsider. And if not, there are plenty of others who—" "What are you talking about?" Sebastian asks, sounding sincerely confused. "You're my mate." "I'm no such thing," Cass snaps, feeling like she's choking. "I'm a human now." "So what?" "So you know as well as I do mating bonds can't exist with humans." Which was the entire reason why she was human now, though she doesn't tell Sebastian that. He remains quiet for a moment, though doesn't let go of her. "Does this bother you?" he finally asks. "That we can't be bonded?" Cass' stomach drops. Is he really so indifferent, then, about the fact that they can no longer be together? "When I told you I loved you, I meant it," she says, feeling tears welling up in her eyes for the first time in days, like they'd been waiting for him to escape all along. "Or did you think I was just saying this to aggravate you?" Sebastian looks startled and pained. "I know you meant it," he quickly intervenes, searching her gaze. "I meant it too." Cass rolls her eyes. "You never actually said it," she mutters, hiding her face between her knees. She feels Sebastian puts his arms around her once more, his forehead resting against her arm. "I love you too, Cass," he sighs. "I thought it was rather obvious. Pretty much the entire world but you had noticed." "It hardly matters now," Cass cuts, a heavy finality to her words. Sebastian tenses against her but doesn't let it go. "Why would you say that?" "It's all that matters. To me, at least." "Are you stupid?" Cassandra snaps. "It was always near impossible for us to love each other. Or at least I thought it was, except it wasn't, but now it is." "I'm confused," Sebastian confesses, taking her face between her hands. She sighs, wondering if perhaps he really hadn't realized the situation they were in now. "Sebastian, you're a wolf, and an alpha one at that. I'm a human. I can't be your mate. You'll need one if you want to remain the leader of your pack." "I know that," Sebastian replies with a shrug that has Cass wants to shake him in anger. "I won't be able to live amongst you, let alone be your mate." Sebastian rolls her eyes, putting his hand against her mouth to shut her up. "I already told my pack I renounced my title because we couldn't possibly live near them or near yours," he says, quickly adding when he sees Cass's eyes widening. "You really think I'd let my mate live somewhere dangerous?" "I'm not your mate," Cassandra says, despite the foolish hope blooming in her chest. "You are," Sebastian insists. Though, if you're against that appellation, I hope you'll at least do me the honor of being my wife. I hear humans are perfectly satisfied being husband and wives instead of mates. Cass shakes her head in disbelief. Sebastian, you can't. You've worked your entire life to be alpha. I can't let you give it all up for me. You can't let me give it all up? Sebastian looks appalled. I'm barely giving anything up. You, on the other, gave your wolf for me, Cass. A major part of yourself. If you think for 1 second I wouldn't make a sacrifice infinitely smaller than the one you've made in return, then you're... I'm pregnant, Cass interrupts, watching his face intently. She'd expect to see it crumble, but Sebastian merely looks surprised for a second, before pure joy crosses his features. You are? He asks breathlessly. I may not survive the birth. I won't be able to look after our baby. Is it mine? Sebastian asks, eyes wide with disbelief and hope. Cass groans. Who else's would it be, you fool? There's never been any others. Sebastian meets her eyes and smiles. We'll be okay, he tells her. As long as we're together, we'll be okay. Chapter 15. Adrian. The silver ring sits at the center of the pentagram, catching the dim candlelight as Adrian weaves his fingers through the air above it. Ancient symbols etched into the wooden table pulse with a faint bluish glow, responding to his movements, to the remnants of his own magic, not the demon's, but his, the meager power that remains his to command. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the chill in the room. His hands tremble slightly, whether from the exertion or the illness that has plagued him since he broke the rules with Cassandra, he isn't sure. Probably both. He narrows his eyes, focusing entirely on the ring. It isn't much, what he can do with his own magic. A charm here, a protection spell there. Nothing like the devastating, life-altering power he wields when granting wishes. But it's something. Something that is still his. Not listening to a word I'm saying, are you? Iris's voice filters through his concentration, fragmented, as if reaching him from underwater. He's vaguely aware she's been speaking for some time. Told her the consequences multiple times. You told her what would happen. It's not your fault. It's not like you wounded her boyfriend. And it's not like you wanted to grant her wish either. Adrian blinks, the spell wavering as his focus breaks. Be quiet, he snaps, more harshly than intended. I need to concentrate. Didn't think you were actually listening, she mutters, though she sounds more frustrated than angry. He returns his attention to the ring. The metal is warm now, almost hot, absorbing the energy he channels into it. He murmurs a final incantation, ancient words that taste like ash on his tongue, and the ring flares brightly for a moment before settling back into an innocuous silver band. There, he says, reaching for it. The moment his fingers close around the metal, the room tilts. His vision swims, and he sways on his feet, suddenly lightheaded. Iris, he calls out, his voice strained. She's at his side instantly, steadying him with a grip that's surprisingly strong for her small frame. You don't have to yell, she grumbles, sliding an arm around his waist. He winces, not having realized she'd still be so close. Against him, she feels warm, alive, and he has to stop himself from leaning into her, from drawing on that warmth. Go give this to Cassandra, he instructs, pulling away from her and pressing the ring into her palm. Iris looks down at it, frowning. What is it? What she gave up. The furrow in Iris's brow deepens. Sorry, but I don't follow. I'm not asking you to, Adrian snaps, a sudden migraine blooming behind his eyes. I'm asking you to bring it to Cass. He drops into a nearby chair, the movement less graceful than he'd prefer, and conjures himself a glass of wine with a flick of his wrist. The first sip brings immediate relief, dulling the sharp edges of his pain, softening the thoughts that cut like glass. He closes his eyes, savoring the temporary respite, already anticipating the sweet oblivion that will follow if he drinks enough. And what should I tell her? Iris snaps back. Yeah, hi, here's for you. It's a ring. Probably enchanted, though, can't be sure. Harmful? Perhaps. As it is, it won't be of much use, Adrian says, eyes still closed. The magic it contains is sealed. You'll just give it to her. in promise that should she or any of her successors down the line need anything, they should come to me presenting this ring. So it's like a promise ring? She asks. Adrian snorts, snapping his fingers for a fresh glass of wine as he drains the first. Sure, you can call it that. He hears Iris shuffle, but doesn't open his eyes to look at her. You said it contained what you took from her. Adrian nods once, slightly. So, like, her wolf is in there? Iris asks. Her magical ability to shift is locked in there. Yes, Adrian confirms, feeling only the slightest effects of the alcohol, which is a shame. He snaps his fingers again, conjuring something stronger. I thought you couldn't give it back? Iris asks, her voice rising in alarm. Adrian's eyes snap open. She doesn't look as alarmed as she sounded, which is good, he supposes. But then again, she has an excellent poker face. He knows because she always wins their poker games, despite how much Adrian cheats. I can't give it back per se, he admits. I'd have to die for her to be able to reclaim her power. But I'd like her to have the possibility. Should it happen? Iris stays silent for a beat. You're immortal, she says eventually, calmly, like she is stating a fact, which she is, Adrian supposes. Cassandra is not, Iris adds. She'll die before you do. As do most people, Adrian snaps, taking a sip of his drink, not because he wants to this time, but because now he can't bear looking at Iris. If I come to pass, he says, either she or whoever bears this ring will be able to reclaim her shifting powers. But you won't, Iris insists, and now she doesn't sound so calm. If I don't, Adrian says before she can say more, at least let it be a symbol of my promise to look after her and her loved ones as much as I can. Iris hesitates again. Why don't you give it to her? Because I can't bear to see the sadness in her eyes, Adrian thinks. Because I'm a coward. Because she won't see me. Her mate won't let her, he says instead. Iris waits until Adrian has to meet her gaze. His vision is blurry now, and he feels numb thanks to the alcohol. Thank fuck for alcohol. He doesn't know how he'd even go on without it. All right, Iris says softly after a while. She turns and heads for the door. I'll make dinner when I come back, she tells Adrian. I will come back afterward, okay? Adrian sighs. I wish you didn't, he thinks. But also, I fear that you won't. If you must, he says instead. After she leaves, he lifts the bottle directly to his lips, drinking deeply, methodically, chasing oblivion. Part of him hopes to be unconscious before she returns. It would be easier than facing her concern, her care that he doesn't deserve. Another part strains to listen for her footsteps, dreading the possibility that this time she might not come back at all. Epilogue. Iris. Cass is 22 when Iris sees her next. Adrian has asked her to deliver a baby gift to Cass, which for some reason he refused to deliver in person. Iris suspects he feels guilty for what he'd done to her, even though it was hardly his fault, just like it was hardly anyone's fault, really. Just a matter of circumstance. He'd done his best to help her afterward, something Iris hadn't expected of him. Having worked for him for a little while now, she knew he didn't much like granting wishes, for that rarely ended well for his clients. But she'd never seen him endanger his health the way he had by breaking the rules so openly like he had for Cass. He must have been quite fond of her, despite his protests. Cassandra is holding a 4-month-old baby when Iris arrives at her home. She's thinner than Iris remembers, looking more frail, but her baby is healthy, and so is her husband, so she seems happy with how things have turned out. What's his name? Iris asks politely. She doesn't care much, but doesn't regret asking when Cass's eyes shine brightly as she replies. Harry. It's short for Harrison. Sebastian's a big fan of those human films. Star battles? Star Wars! Sebastian replies, giving Cass a wounded look. Iris, who's never seen any of the 3 Star Wars films, though she's pretty sure the main character wasn't called Harrison but Lucas or Luke, wisely changes topic. This is a gift from Adrian, she tells Cass, handing her a small box. Sebastian looks like he's seriously considering ripping it out of her grasp, but Cass appeases him with a glance. What is it? A promise from him, Iris explains. Should you or someone from your family need help, tell them to come to the shop with this ring. Adrian will do whatever he can to help. Could we go now and have him make Cass a wolf again? Sebastian asks. 'Cause we're days away from giving up our son to her brother for safety, and she may not show it, but it's keeping her awake at night. We already decided we wouldn't risk going back, Cass says, looking at her child resolutely. Giving her a wolf back is impossible, Iris explains. This would mean canceling her wish, and that can't be done. But if there's anything else we can do... You've done enough, Sebastian snaps, showing her out. Thank you, Cassandra tells Iris over her shoulder. Tell him thank you. Her gaze meets Iris's. Despite everything, she does seem grateful, especially when her eyes settle on Sebastian, whom Iris thinks she knows wouldn't be here without Adrian. Iris wonders if she could ever love someone that much, she asks herself on her way back to the shop, to the point where she'd sacrifice so much for them. Have you ever been in love? Iris asks Adrian, curiously, a couple of hours later while closing the shop. He doesn't reply. Thanks for listening, guys. I really hope you enjoyed revisiting this story. Do you have a favorite of mine you like to revisit and would enjoy seeing as a video in the future? Last but not least, remember that if you want more stories and would like to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon. The link is in the description below.